What's up, guys? Jared here. I wanted to make this video to thank you all for the 20,000 subscriber benchmark. It's an interesting time whenever you're starting over in life, and I really wanted to thank you all for all of your support. So for this video, I am going to be breaking down my background that I have created. This is going to be the background for the channel, and this is what I'm calling my wall of idols. And something that was really important to me when choosing what pictures to put on there is I didn't want to be like the Great Gatsby. I didn't want to curate this list to, have certain number of this kind of people, that kind of people, because I really wanted to just have people on here that at some point in my life, they really blew my mind or they had some kind of really significant effect on me. And, I really wanted to be able to hold a conversation about all of the people on this wall. So I'm going to start breaking down each one of these and why they're so meaningful to me. So starting from the top left. So this is kind of an interesting one. Maybe you guys would be surprised to see this. This is Kevin Gates, the depressed gangster. Kevin Gates is from Baton Rouge. Over the last couple of years, his music has kind of meant a lot to me. He's extremely authentic. He's extremely passionate when he speaks. He talks very openly about his mental health issues. He talks very authentically about what is important to him in life, especially his family. His best album is definitely Isla. If anyone in the comments is also a fan of Kevin Gates. So he definitely has an esteemed place on the wall. Next up is, of course, Akira Kurosawa, one of the fathers of modern filmmaking. I recently rewatched Rashomon, and God, it is as good as people think it is. I mean, it is incredible. Seven Samurai is also amazing. Ikiru, although a little bit boring at the beginning, is a very, very emotionally resonant film. Kurosawa's autobiography is also an extremely good read. I really recommend it. It actually had a pretty profound impact on me in deciding to want to pursue filmmaking when I was young. So definitely check it out. It's called Something Like an Autobiography. Next up is Liv Ullmann. Liv Ullmann is an actress. She's Norwegian, and she is the muse of Swedish filmmaker Ingmar Bergman. I had such a mad crush on Liv Ullmann when I was in college. Watched a lot of Bergman films, especially Fanny and Alexander. She plays this matriarchal figure who's just always just so warm and comforting and sincere in all of his movies. Of course, she's most famous for Persona, but she definitely gets an esteemed on the wall, picture on the wall. Next up is a Houston icon, DJ Screw. So DJ Screw is basically a little bit like Houston Jesus. He created chopped and screwed music. He's the guy who pioneered kind of, sipping syrup, sip drank, blow dank, sipping lean, sticking green, all that good Houston stuff. I used to listen to a lot of DJ Screwed mixtapes when I was writing Thug Notes. My favorite one is Wineberry Over Gold. DJ Screw, man, changed the game. Even Travis Scott is definitely shouting out to him in some of his stuff these days. Next up is Takashi Miike. Takashi Miike, I talked about him in my Best Directors of All Time video. I mean, the guy is a mad genius. He makes up to 4 movies a year, which in itself requires superhuman stamina. He's done movies in all different kinds of genres, and they're all pretty darn good. Or at least there's a good version of every genre. Eddie Murphy, I mean, God, can you think of a more talented actor? I mean, whether or not you're a fan of his movies, I actually become more of a fan in my older age. Like, there was a time when Norbit came out, I was like, man, fuck that. There's no way I'm going to see that. But I actually watched Norbit, and it is goddamn entertaining, especially these days when comedy is, overly politicized. Everything seems to be political comedy, and Eddie Murphy has never gotten overly political. I mean, you could say maybe his stand-up has dipped into it sometimes, but man, watch The Nutty Professor and tell me that that isn't one of the most talented men in the world. I mean, he really is a comedy god. Next up, Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger, he always brings up an interesting question about what it means to be a good actor. Does Arnold Schwarzenegger have range? Probably not, but damn does he have presence. I mean, he is the star of some of the greatest action movies ever made. In some cases, some of the greatest movies ever made. T1, T2, Total Recall. He is the man just looks good on the silver screen. He has presence. And sometimes you don't have to be Gary Oldman to be an incredible actor, to command the screen and to, create a great movie. All right, coming back up, we got Marty Scorsese. I mean, what is there to say? The man has continued to make incredible movies up into his 70s. The Wolf of Wall Street is maybe even my favorite of his movies, and he made it in his 70s, which is insane. He is continually pushing boundaries. He is a godfather of cinema, a true legend, a true S-tier director. All right, we got James Gandolfini up here. This is definitely up here because of my love for The Sopranos. And I really think The Sopranos has a very unique place in kind of the common consciousness of millennials, of which I am one. And I think because The Sopranos really dealt with this change in masculinity for our generation, in that Tony Soprano was always struggling with the notion of what does it mean to be a man in this day and age. Should we be like Gary Cooper, the strong, silent type who takes care of his own problems, or should we become the modern man that society seems to be pushing us to and that his therapist is pushing us to? And how do you reconcile that when you're trying to build a family and trying to set the stage for what's right for your family and your community? So James Gandolfini, RIP, you're a fucking legend, man. Next up is Choi Min-sik. I mean, look, Oldboy is one of the greatest movies ever made, and his performance in Oldboy is one for the ages. He goes through every emotion, and he nails every single one. It is a performance that transcends language, and he's immortal in my eyes for that performance. And I've seen him in a handful of other Korean movies, but to be honest, he's up here for his performance in Oldboy. Next up is Young Thug. So Young Thug there have been times where I was like, oh my God, Young Thug is the new Michael Jackson. This guy can just make guttural noises and it just comes off like beautiful poetry. I didn't really like his last album, but I'm a big fan of his singing album, Easy Breezy Beautiful Thugger Girls. And then I listened to Jeffrey hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Shout out Ben Steiner, the writer of Earthling Cinema, who turned me on to Young Thug. Up here, we got Friedrich Nietzsche. So, the death of God is definitely probably the most relevant milestone of modern thought of our times. Of course, like many college kids, I was very enthralled by his critique of Christianity, and it would be insincere of me not to put him on the wall because he definitely had a significant impact on my intellectual development. Next up, we got Camus, another existentialist, although from what I hear, he didn't like that term, but I don't really give a shit. So Camus, I remember reading The Myth of Sisyphus in college, and it had a profound impact on me. I read The Stranger during my time writing Thug Notes, and similarly, it really put some things into context that I was struggling with philosophically during that time. So Camus gets an esteemed place on the wall. Charlie Chaplin, another complete legend of cinema. I mean, The Kid, City Lights, I mean, these movies bring me to tears every single time I watch them. So Charlie Chaplin, fucking legend. Same thing goes with Buster Keaton. I mean, really the only movie that I've seen many times of his is The General, but his physicality and his dedication to physical performance and cinema cannot be understated. So again, a legend. Coming back up, we got Jack Nicholson. I mean, this guy, he's got range and he just looks good on fucking celluloid. And he is the star of so many legendary pictures. I mean, Chinatown, The Shining, Easy Rider. I mean, find a period of cinema, and Jack Nicholson has made a mark in that era in pretty much all genres. The guy pretty much has never done any wrong. Next up is Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky is my favorite author. Crime and Punishment was something that I read in high school, and that was really my first exposure to existential thinking. And so Because of that, Dostoevsky will always kind of have a special place in my heart, more so than Camus and Nietzsche, because when I read Crime and Punishment in my senior year of high school, and then later that year, The Brothers Karamazov, that was really, he was the guy who really helped me figure out what it meant to be somebody who was struggling with, religious doubt. So Dostoevsky, always a legend in my book, even though he is a religious man, and I don't really consider myself a religious man. In this stage of my life, if I ever do, it'll undoubtedly be within the kind of Dostoevsky/Kierkegaard tradition. Next up is who? Mike Jones, 281-330-8004. So this guy, Houston rapper, came up in Houston by rapping his phone number. He was the biggest deal in the world when I was in high school and a constant source of inspiration when I was writing Thug Notes. Mike Jones, I know every single word to the Who is Mike Jones album. And as a matter of fact, there's like 5 to 7 Easter eggs throughout Wisecrack videos where we put Mike Jones' phone number in the background of videos. And some of them have been found, but some of them have not been found. And it's always kind of been a little bit of an inside joke to me because he kind of became a little bit of a joke in the rap game. But I mean, I still think like he's got legit talent, and I hope that his comeback album, Where is Mike Jones, eventually does drop, and I hope he becomes a legend again. All right, going back down, we got Viola Davis. Viola Davis, man, when I saw her in Doubt, which was her breakout role, I was like, who is this woman who just upstaged both Philip Seymour Hoffman and Meryl Streep in the same movie? That's already legend status, and that was really her first breakout role. So immediately I knew this is not just another actress. This person is basically the new Meryl Streep. I mean, Viola Davis could be Batman, and it would be good. All right, coming back up, we got Keanu, of course, the man who would be our next president if he didn't live in Canada. I mean, what's not to say about the professionalism of this man? He, does a lot of his own fight scenes. He is extremely disciplined. He has extremely good character. Yeah, there are some movies where he's horribly miscast and/or doesn't really act the best, but man, whatever. He is a model human being and makes great films and is really one of the few warriors of action cinema that's really keeping the genre afloat. Next up, of course, the legends, Matt Stone and Trey Parker. I mean, what's to say? I mean, I have seen all 300 and some episodes of South Park 3 or 4 times just in the last year. And, when it comes to having comedy with a perspective, with a strong sense of voice, there's nobody who is better than Trey Parker and Matt Stone, specifically Trey, because he writes everything. These guys are the Jonathan Swift of our time, true genius satirists. They have no equals, in my opinion. David Lynch. David Lynch is, he is the cinematic spiritualist. His movies resonate on a subconscious and spiritual level in ways that I think language cannot convey. Twin Peaks is probably the greatest TV show of all time, and I love all of his movies. Well, some more than others. Inland Empire probably is a little bit difficult to get through, but he's the man. He'll always be an S-tier director in my book. All right, coming back up, we got Fat Orson Welles. And yes, I deliberately chose him when he was fat because I really like the movie F for Fake. Instead of reading Baudrillard, you can really just watch F for Fake because it gives a better description of postmodernism and one that's more palatable and digestible than reading Baudrillard. And also, come on, the guy made like the greatest movie of all time when he's 24. I mean, he's a badass. Coming down, we got John Wayne. Tell me that there's a better movie than The Searchers and I will call you a liar. I mean, John Wayne is a fucking legend. I mean, The Searchers is amazing. The Quiet Man is amazing. Stagecoach is amazing. Rio Bravo is amazing. He's been in so many of the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is fucking incredible. He is a legend and deserves to be on the wall. Isabelle Huppert, talk about a fearless actress. She has done so many ballsy, risky roles, and she nails and gives it 100% every time, from The Piano Teacher to Elle. I mean, when she's in a movie, you know you're going to see a great performance, and you know you're going to see somebody who is not afraid to take risks. So Isabelle is a legend. Tony Leung Chu Wai. I mean, God, talk about a fucking movie star. I mean, this guy, he's in one of the most balls to the wall action movies of all time, Hard Boiled. He's in one of the greatest romance movies of all time, In the Mood for Love. What else is he in? Oh, yeah, he's in like the best gay movie ever, Happy Together, like almost 8 years before Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger decided to make out. I mean, it's just such a shame that his only American role was recent, because he's been speaking English for like, I don't know, at least 30 years to my knowledge. So Tony Leung deserves this spot on the wall. Similarly, we got Maggie Cheung. She is the co-star of In the Mood for Love, just someone I've got a mad crush on. Just such subtlety in her acting style, and she's also in a lot of the early Jackie Chan movies. She's got great range. She can even do a little bit of stunt work, and also is the co-star in one of the greatest romances of all time. So Maggie Cheung is hardcore awesome. Dave Chappelle, I mean, what's not to say about Dave Chappelle? The dude's a legend. He's one of the few funny stand-up comedians that we still have. He is fearless. He doesn't compromise. He says whatever is on his mind, and he's fucking funny every time. There's no television show that was more impactful to me during my childhood than Chappelle's Show, and it's a legendary show. It's still funny to this day. Man, you know the reason why Comedy Central isn't investing in new shows during the pandemic? The pandemic is just an excuse. The truth is that reruns of Chappelle's Show and South Park are funnier than anything that's coming out these days. So, I mean, shit, might as well just keep playing the reruns. Why invest in something new? The pandemic is a great excuse to just admit that we haven't come up with anything good in 15 years. So, Dave Chappelle, you are the best. Woody Allen, the namesake of my dog. I mean, I love so many Woody Allen films. I mean, Woody Allen is important to me because there's so many elements of my personality that overlap with his. I mean, he is a Jewish neurotic existentialist who loves Russian literature and big questions in life and kind of self-defeating humor, which are all things you can say about me. So Woody Allen has always been an important influence in my life. Tom Cruise, I mean, come on, man. Tom Cruise has never been bad in a movie. He is amazing in fucking everything. He is an amazing drama actor, deserved the Oscar for Magnolia. All his Mission Impossible performances are amazing. He does his own stunts. Some of the shit that he does in Mission Impossible 2, he should be dead for. He, straps himself on a plane for cinema. He fights and works hard to maintain the integrity of practical effects. When he was shooting Eyes Wide Shut, which I still think is the longest running production of all time, he basically just said, I don't care. I know this production is going on too long, but Kubrick is my master and I will just humbly do what he says. The man is a consummate professional and an all-around badass of cinema. Coming up, Wong Kar-wai, the art house director from Hong Kong. In the 90s, this guy made some of the most exciting cinema. Some of his more recent efforts haven't been that great, but he was a huge influence in me when I was in college, and In the Mood for Love is one of the finest films ever made, and so Wong Kar-wai will always have a legendary status in my book. Next up, Mozart. I mean, what's not to say? I mean, the guy's music is so good that, there have been Pushkin poems and Andrew Schaefer plays and later Milos Forman movies written about basically the concept that his music is divinely inspired because it's just that good. Up here is Park Chan-wook. Park Chan-wook is the director of Old Boy. The man is a master of form, a master of style. His American movie Stoker is probably the best, except for maybe Snowpiercer, probably the best example of a successful Asian filmmaker coming to America to create a film, because there's not a really good hit rate there. But the movie just comes off almost like a film school essay. I mean, the guy is so smart with the way that he manipulates film form, and he's a true master. All right, last bunch. We got Jackie Chan. I mean, man, if you think about the things that this guy did in Hong Kong in the 80s just for his art, I mean, he's a fucking wild man. And these movies are awesome. He's a great director. In some of his later work, he's actually shown some range as an actor, but obviously he's a stuntman at heart, and he's fucking great at it. And, in some ways, he is the peak of action cinema. And, man, it just makes me sad that we call Marvel movies action movies when compared to what this guy does. I mean, Jackie Chan risks his life and breaks every bone in his body for his movies, and a Marvel actor just shows up at a green screen in Burbank and emotes on cue in front of a green screen. Anyway, coming up next is David Cronenberg. I mean, Videodrome is one of my favorite movies of all time. The guy is very much a film philosopher He talks about the intersection of technology and sexuality and transhumanism, and he does so in an awesome practical special effects genre, masterpiece after masterpiece. So the guy is a total badass. Next up is Hitchcock. I mean, Hitchcock is the godfather of modern cinema. Nobody has basically taught a whole generation of filmmakers how form follows function and how to create suspense and how to tell good, subtle humor through camera movement than Alfred Hitchcock. Pretty much everything you want to learn about making a good movie, you can learn from this man. So, complete, total legend. Next up is George Carlin. George Carlin, another film philosopher, comedian philosopher, stand-up philosopher. I mean, when he talks about atheism, or he talks about global warming and the fact that the planet isn't in trouble, we are. I mean, these are all profound insights that are told with comedy, and I think that he also has a couple of theses on language that are told in jokes that actually have pretty profound points. So Carlin is he's funny, he's crass, he makes profound points, and he's fearless. So he is a legend. Next up, we got Toshiro Mifune. I mean, talk about range of acting. I mean, his performance in Rashomon is so brutal and so, what's the word I'm looking for? He's so just mad and crazy, and that style of performance also bleeds into Seven Samurai. And his bromance with Kurosawa, which unfortunately ended midway through their career, is a little bit of a tragedy, but goddamn did they create some fucking legendary pieces of work together. At the bottom, we have the one himself, Kubrick. I mean, let's be honest, cinema pretty much peaked with this man. He's the one. He was the one that the medium was created for. He's the one that brought it to its peak, and no one will ever be as good as he was. But that's okay, because he was great. Right here, we got my favorite band of all time, Kraftwerk. This is the original Four, the 70s Four. Someone once described them as cinema for the ears. I don't really know what qualifies them to say that, but it sounded good to me since I'm such a cinephile, and they really are the perfect example of a true Gesamtkunstwerk, which is just a fancy Wagnerian way to say a complete work of art, because it's not only their music, but also their aesthetic, their performances, that all kind of come together to create this grand artistic statement about transhumanism, about fascism, and all with a great wry sense of humor. I really recommend there's a BBC documentary on them that features all these academics talking about the message of Kraftwerk, and so I really recommend that if you want to nerd out. Up here is Igor Stravinsky. You know, there's a lot of classical composers, specifically a lot of Russian composers that I wanted to put up there, like Shostakovich and Glinka, but I decided to go with Stravinsky because The Rite of Spring and Petrushka are two of my favorite pieces, and I've listened to the Shrovetide Fair hundreds and hundreds of times, and so kind of wanted to give thanks to him for that. Up here is, of course, the man himself, Slavoj Žižek. I love him because the man is a showman. He He loves cinema. He loves exploring ideas through cinema, not unlike me. He calls himself a clown, and to that I would say, yes, he is a clown. But you know what? People's attention span is not charity. Having good ideas is not enough. You also need to be able to communicate them in an entertaining way these days, and I think Zizek is really good at doing that. And of course, I think his Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and how the contradictions in capitalism might end up killing us before capitalism ends is a thesis worth listening to. Already go up through them. We got Jean-Paul Sartre. You know, if I were to describe my kind of central beliefs, I would say it's elementary school level Sartre. I just believe that, people deserve dignity based on the fact that we did not we did not choose to be born, and we're born with immutable facts, our facticity that we did not choose. And based on that, you should be granted human rights and dignity. Existentialism is in fact a humanism. Down here we got the old Ludwig van Beethoven. I've listened to Beethoven's Ninth, the Fourth Movement hundreds and hundreds of times. It is pure passion in music form, and I love every second of it. All right, well, that's the whole wall. So now you guys know why exactly I have each one of these figures on the wall. I'm really excited about this channel. Next week, I've got a collab coming up with a Latin American philosopher, Diego Ruzarin, on a new format that I planned on it being pretty repeatable, so I'm excited for it. Once again, thanks everybody for continuing to follow me and my work. I'm really having a good time here in Finland, and I'll also have a new travel vlog coming up soon. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Peace.